October 2020, we're dropping right into a massive operational anomaly at the Muskegon City Clerk's office in Michigan. What starts as a localized, highly unusual spike in voter registration applications immediately triggers a complex, multi-agency investigation, pulling in both the Muskegon Police Department and the Michigan State Police. We're going to look strictly at the data, the forensic evidence, and the logs to see exactly how this unfolded. The sheer volume of this anomaly is staggering. The Muskegon City Clerk's office is suddenly hit with the receipt of 8,000 to 10,000 voter registration applications. These are coming in through bulk mail parcels and direct in-person delivery. When you look at the city's historical metrics, this massive influx is completely unprecedented, and it instantly forces officials to start digging into the physical paperwork. And when they cross-reference these submissions against the Michigan Secretary of State records, they hit immediate administrative friction points. The police logs show a glaring pattern of fabricated data. We're talking non-existent residential addresses, disconnected phone numbers, and, crucially, signatures that simply do not match DMV records. In some cases, investigators are finding multiple distinct applications completely filled out in the exact same handwriting. But you quickly realize this isn't just an isolated incident in Muskegon. Investigators start tracing parallel operational vectors across the state. They map out active canvassing structures operating simultaneously in major geographic nodes: Detroit, Ypsilanti, Southfield, Flint, and Lansing. The infrastructure points to a highly coordinated statewide effort that had been operating out of centralized hubs since August of that year. So who is actually moving this paper? After an individual drops off roughly 2,500 applications at the clerk's office, the Michigan State Police execute a 48-hour GPS warrant to track her movements. They trace her rented Volkswagen Jetta, registered to EN Holdings, or Enterprise Rent-A-Car, straight back to a Best Western hotel in Grand Haven, establishing it as a literal secondary operational base. To understand the mechanics, you have to look at the financial engine driving the operation. The primary subject actually admits to investigators that she is being paid $1,150 a week to locate and process unregistered voters. Because the payout is based entirely on volume rather than accuracy, this weekly payment vector heavily incentivizes ground-level workers to submit as many forms as humanly possible. Let's deconstruct how this canvasser scheme operates on the pavement. Workers are given strict daily shift quotas. To receive their bi-weekly pay, which is systematically loaded onto prepaid debit cards, they absolutely have to hit those numbers. It's essentially a high-pressure sales tactic. If they can't organically locate unregistered citizens, this quota system directly pushes them toward the fictitious generation of voter data just to get paid. You can see these supervisory directives executed perfectly at a local operational hub, right at the intersection of Broadway and Hoyt in Muskegon. Workers confess they are mandated to turn in 7 to 10 applications per shift. When they fall short, supervisors explicitly instruct them to just invent social security numbers and birth dates. They're even assured that these fabricated forms will just be shipped to a main office and shredded, insulating them from any legal blowback. Now track the interagency chain of custody. In October 2020, the Michigan State Police briefed the FBI requesting a joint investigation, but the momentum immediately hits a wall. By March 2021, the Department of Justice's Public Integrity Section, known as PIN, authorizes a narrow financial inquiry into those prepaid debit cards, but they actively block a direct voter fraud investigation. By August 2021, PIN halts further action in the Western District entirely. Despite these operational blockades, the FBI does manage to pull a random empirical sample of 20 applications flagged by the Muskegon clerk. The forensic breakdown is severe. Out of 20 random forms, 7 are completely fabricated identities. 6 feature real names but have critical data mismatches, like forged addresses. That means only 7 out of the 20 sampled applications actually contain correct, verifiable information. Elaborating on those technological friction points, investigators use advanced database systems like Accurate and Clear to query the data. They document that the fabricated identities are routing to completely non-existent residential addresses, sometimes mapping to public parks, or linking to inactive phone lines. And when a real identity is hijacked, the dates of birth and social security numbers just flat out fail to match federal records. Fast forward to February 2023, and you hit a highly specific legal friction point. PIN issues a limited investigative concurrence. They allow the FBI to investigate the completely fabricated, made-up identities. But, and this is a critical restriction, they explicitly prohibit the FBI from investigating the applications that feature real citizens whose signatures had been forged. They artificially limit the scope, completely sidelining the hijacked identities. To ground the systemic failure in actual civilian impact, look at a verified complaint from a resident in Southfield. An operative approaches her home to collect an absentee ballot. She explicitly declines to register or participate. Yet, a few weeks later, despite her refusal, she receives both a voter ID card and an absentee ballot in the mail. Her actual identity is pushed through the operational vector entirely without her consent. You'd think that would accelerate things, but the bureaucratic delay tactics just keep compounding. In early 2023, PIN finally authorizes a full grand jury investigation into the completely fake forms, and the FBI preps for mass interviews with the ground-level canvassers. But then, abruptly, in October 2023, PIN issues another interagency blockade, ordering the FBI to stand down and derailing the active investigative momentum until December. The precise administrative protocol weaponized here is the DOJ's election year sensitivities policy, specifically Section 9-85.500. Because Michigan has state and local elections scheduled for November 2023, the DOJ dictates that overtly interviewing operatives about a 2020 scheme right before a new election could create the public perception of federal interference. So, the institutional mandate literally requires law enforcement to stand down. The FBI is strictly ordered to delay all overt investigative actions, meaning they cannot question the ground-level operatives involved in fabricating this data until the November 2023 election is fully concluded, officially certified, and entirely uncontested. Tracing the final chronological vectors, the FBI finally executes those ground interviews in December 2023. By May 2024, the FBI laboratory completes its extensive handwriting analysis on the fabricated forms. But despite the forensic analysis, the documented confessions, and the structural evidence, the United States Attorney's Office officially declines prosecution in July 2024. We terminate the narrative on a systemic contradiction. By October 2024, the investigation is firmly closed. But then, External Freedom of Information Act inquiries begin demanding the release of the records. Facing imminent public disclosure of the systemic failures we just mapped, the USAO suddenly blind requests the FBI files back, reopening and reconsidering the exact same prosecution they had already declined.